He always thought he knew his boy. But after 20 years, one truth came out that shook him harder than anything since the day JFK was shot. You see, back in our time, fathers believed they could read their sons like the back of their hand. Whether it was the way they threw a baseball, fixed up an old Chevy, or kept their word. But this father was about to learn that sometimes, even after decades, you realize you didn't know the whole story. It all started in the late 90s, when the world felt different. The Cold War was over, the Berlin Wall had fallen, and America was looking ahead. He was working long hours, providing for his family, the way men of his generation were taught to do. His son, Michael, was a quiet kid, good in school, respectful, not the type to get in trouble. A father couldn't ask for more, right? Or so he thought. But fathers know silence can hide a lot. Sometimes too much. He noticed things, small things. Michael wasn't interested in the things most boys were. He never cared for sports. He never asked to learn how to change the oil on the '67 Mustang his dad kept in the garage. Instead, he'd disappear for hours, scribbling in notebooks or playing guitar in his room. He'll grow out of it, the father would tell himself. He'll come around. He didn't press the boy, not much. After all, his own father back in the '50s had been strict, military style, and he had sworn never to be that hard. He wanted Michael to have freedom, to find his own way. Still, a father can't help but wonder. Did he give too much space? Did he miss something? The years passed. Michael went off to college, built his own life, and the calls home grew shorter, fewer. The father told himself this was normal. Sons grow up, they pull away. But the distance felt heavier than it should. And deep down, he wondered if it was more than just time and miles that stood between them. Then one day, after 2 decades of questions, the truth finally landed in his lap. And it wasn't at all what he expected. Stick with me. The next part will surprise you. It was a summer afternoon, one of those golden days when the sun sits heavy in the sky and every sound seems sharper. The father was cleaning out the garage, sifting through boxes of old tools, photo albums, and half-forgotten keepsakes. That's when he found it, a plain cardboard box tucked away behind a stack of dusty paint cans. Inside, neatly packed, were Michael's old notebooks. He almost put them aside. After all, those were his son's private things. But something in him, maybe that quiet ache of a father wanting to understand, made him open one. The handwriting was unmistakable. Michael's careful, slanted script. The words on the pages stopped him cold. They weren't just songs or journal entries. They were letters, dozens of them. Letters never sent, written to his father. Each one started the same. Dad, I wish I could tell you this. Some are filled with gratitude. Thank you for working hard, for keeping food on the table, for the roof over my head. Others carried questions that hit like a hammer. Do you love me for who I am, or for who you want me to be? Why don't we talk, really talk? The father sat there, sweat on his brow, his calloused hands shaking as he turned page after page. He thought of all the nights he came home late, too tired to listen. The weekends he spent working on the car while his son sat alone with his guitar. He had always thought he was doing his job as a man, as a provider. But had he missed the other job, the one that mattered even more? And then, in the final notebook, there was a revelation that hit harder than all the rest. Michael had been living with a truth he had never shared, a truth he feared his father would never accept, and it explained everything. But what happened next changed everything. The last notebook felt heavier than the others, though it weighed no more than a pound. The father turned to the final pages, and there it was, plain, honest, written without anger, but with fear and hope all at once. Dad, the words began, I've never known how to tell you this. For years I've been afraid you'd see me differently. I'm not the son you probably imagined. I'm not the man who'll pass down the Mustang, or spend Sundays watching football. I'm the man who writes songs, who feels things deeply, who loves differently than you might expect. I'm gay, and I hope one day you'll still call me your son. The father froze. He read the lines again, as though his eyes had betrayed him the first time. 20 years of distance suddenly made sense. The careful silence, the space, the feeling of something unspoken between them. It wasn't rebellion. It wasn't rejection. It was fear. Fear of his own father's judgment. He sat there in the garage, the smell of oil and old wood around him, his hands trembling over the pages. And all at once, memories poured back. Michael's quiet eyes as a teenager. The way he'd test the waters with certain questions, then retreat when his dad brushed them off. The way he never brought a girlfriend home. All the signs had been there, but the father, caught in his own world of work and duty, hadn't seen them. Or maybe he hadn't wanted to. Now, staring at the truth in his son's own handwriting, he felt the weight of 20 lost years. But he also felt something else, the stirring of choice. What kind of father would he be, now that he finally knew? Would he cling to old expectations, or reach across the distance, however late it might be? He set the notebook down, looked out into the driveway where the Mustang sat, sunlight glinting off its chrome. That car had carried him through so many chapters of life. But could it carry him into this new one? What would you have done if you were in his shoes? What are your thoughts? Share your memories in the comments. That evening, the father sat at the kitchen table, the notebook stacked neatly in front of him. He poured himself a glass of bourbon, the way men of his generation often did when the weight of the world pressed too heavy. He took a slow sip and stared at the wood grain of the table, thinking about all the times he had chosen silence over conversation. He picked up the phone. For years, their calls had been short, birthdays, holidays, the occasional check-in. But this time, his hands trembled as he dialed. Michael answered on the third ring, his voice cautious, almost formal, as if he was speaking to an old acquaintance rather than his father. "Hey, Dad." "Eh, son?" The father's voice cracked a little. He cleared his throat. "I was in the garage today. Found some of your old notebooks." There was silence on the line, the kind of silence that stretches, that says more than words ever could. Finally, Michael spoke, his voice low. "You read them?" "I did." The father took another sip, then set the glass down. "And son, I wish I'd known sooner. I wish I'd listened. I'm sorry it took me 20 years to hear you." On the other end, he could hear his son's breathing, uneven, like someone holding back a tide. "So, you know." "I know," the father said. "And let me tell you something. You're still my boy. Always will be. Doesn't matter who you love or how you live. You're my son. That's never going to change." The silence broke then, not with words, but with the sound of a grown man trying not to cry. And in that moment, 2 decades of distance began to crumble. It wasn't a full bridge yet, more like the first plank laid across a canyon. But it was something. The father leaned back in his chair, feeling both the weight of the years behind him and a strange, unexpected lightness in front of him. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be simple. Conversations would need to happen. Old wounds would need healing. But for the first time in a long time, he felt like he was walking beside his son again, not behind or ahead. And then Michael said something that stopped him cold, something that showed just how much those lost years had cost. Michael's voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "Dad, there were so many times I thought about calling you, about telling you the truth. But every time, I'd hear your voice in my head, the way you talk about the world, about men needing to be tough, about tradition. I thought if I told you, I'd lose you." The father felt his chest tighten. He remembered those conversations, the casual remarks he never thought twice about. Words meant to sound strong, words he thought were harmless, but to his son, they had been walls. Walls that kept him silent, walls that kept them apart. He swallowed hard. "Son, I can't take back what I said back then. I can't erase the years we lost. But I can tell you this, you'll never lose me. Not now. Not ever." There was another pause. Then Michael's tone softened, carrying a mix of relief and sorrow. I wish Mom could hear you say that. For the first time in years, father and son laughed together. Not a loud laugh, but the kind that comes when a burden finally begins to lift. They talked for hours that night. About life, about music, about the little details they'd missed. The father learned that Michael had built a life he was proud of, though it had been lonely at times. He had a partner now, someone steady and kind. And the father realized this was his chance. A second chance to be the man his son had always needed. But just as the call was ending, Michael asked a question that carried more weight than anything else he'd said that night. "Dad, do you want to meet him?" The question hung in the air like a challenge, but also like an invitation. The father stared at the bourbon glass. Half empty now, the ice melted into water. He thought about all the years he had missed, birthdays, graduations, the quiet evenings his son must have spent wondering if his father would ever accept him. "Do I want to meet him?" The father repeated slowly, almost to himself. Then his voice grew steady. "Son, if he's important to you, then he's important to me. Yes, I want to meet him." On the other end of the line, there was a long exhale, relief, disbelief, maybe both. "You mean that?" "I've made enough mistakes already," the father said. "But I won't make this one. Bring him. Let's have dinner. I'll fire up the grill, the way I used to when you were a kid." Michael chuckled softly. "He's vegetarian, Dad." The father paused, then let out a laugh that surprised even him. "Well, guess it's time I learned how to grill vegetables." That small exchange broke through years of distance more than any speech could. It was simple, human, and real. For the first time in 2 decades, father and son weren't standing on opposite sides of silence. They were finally in the same place. A week later, the father stood on his porch, the old Mustang gleaming in the driveway, the scent of charcoal rising from the grill. He was nervous, more nervous than he had been on his wedding day. Then he saw them walking up the path, his son, older now, confident but still with that same quiet gentleness. And beside him, a man who looked him straight in the eye, firm handshake, respectful but unafraid. The father knew, in that instant, that his life had entered a new chapter, one he never expected, but one that felt right. That night, as they sat around the table, sharing stories and laughter, he realized something. Legacy isn't about passing down cars, or tools, or even traditions. Legacy is about passing down love, acceptance, and the courage to stand by your family, no matter what. And for the first time in years, he felt truly at peace. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more untold history and classic stories. Some truths take decades to surface, but when they finally do, they can heal more than you ever imagined.